of the webinar. There we go. Recording in progress. Session four of the Raising Kids in the Digital Age. And I wanted to, Abby, am I able to share the screen?
Try. If not, I can make you a co-host.
Let me see. Yeah, no, I'm good. So this is just the description of tonight's COVID and Beyond, Raising Kids in the Digital Age, mental health webinar series, helping parents, guardians help their students, and so on. Fourth one, recovering from outcome fever. Recovering from outcome fever. Outcome fever is what Jeff calls the very common phenomenon today, where children are judged by their accomplishments and not by who they are. This is especially damaging to young people who are trying to figure out who they want to be. In this session, we will talk about how outcome fever affects your family and give you tips for changing the focus from what your children do to who they are as people. Also, this is a good time to emphasize the importance of building working collaborative relationships with teachers, coaches, and school administrators. And Abby can put these links, the first session, the second session, the third session, those were all recorded. And Abby, if you get a second, maybe you can put those links in the chat.
I can.
And there's a picture of our handsome friend, Judge Broderick. So let me get back to everybody. We do have a young guest, Bobby Foose. If you can see him in the, Bobby, say hi.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Bobby is a junior at Colgate University, went to school in, well, he'll introduce himself later. And Bobby's going to give you some firsthand reporting from the Gen Z frontier of outcome fever and what it's like and what it feels like. So let me just share this little outline that I prepared. I just want you guys, and I've asked a lot of this, I want the people on this call, if you don't mind, parents and educators, to think about who was your most important guide as a kid and the nature of that relationship. I think for me, it'd probably be my paternal uncle. But I just want you to cogitate on that as we talk. Who guided you through your youth, in my case, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? Who guided you and what was the nature of that relationship? And I just want to throw that out there. And let me just do the first couple of items on my outline. I always wanted to use some Latin phrase, Judge, right? So this came, my college's motto, when I was Bobby's age, I had no idea what this meant, but my college's motto was Vox Clamantis in Deserto, or Deserto, I suppose, which means voice crying in the wilderness. And then I've written here, from whence judges and my passion, from whence does it come? And I'll read number 2 and then explain. Outcome fever is so pervasive as to be invisible. And we feel like Paul Revere, we are ringing alarm bells about not only, and I'll only mention it once, the 8 young men who have suicided at WPI since August. We all hear about tragedies, but we think that outcome fever is at the heart of why kids aren't feeling well. And we additionally feel that we as adults, educators, parents, and coaches, just by having this conversation, can put a dent in this outcome fever as we communicate to kids that we understand how they're actually feeling. So let John and me not be the only voices who are helping kids understand that the forces prevailing against them create this thing called outcome fever, which we'll get into more as this evening goes on. So let me just stop there and see, does anybody have any, you can raise your digital hand or just pop in. We don't have a lot of people on this call. Does anybody have a comment, anything they want to say at this time? Please let me know. I'd rather make these more interactive if I possibly can. But so again, it's a very small group, so feel free to pitch in at any time. Did anybody, well, let me save that. Let me just go back to this outline for a second. Sorry. outcome fever. That's the main subject on the docket tonight. So let me just look at number 3 here. And I've spoken about holding environment before, and how outcome fever affects the holding environment. Again, the holding environment was a concept in psychoanalysis, just about if you want to raise a healthy kid, you just need to have a predictable holding environment. You're going to make mistakes as parents, but you just want to have your baby boy or girl know that you're there and you're alive, and you know, feed him or her clothes, safety, warmth, and all of that. And you create that what shall we say, that psychological holding environment. Our feeling about outcome fever, and then I want to turn this over to Bobby with some introduction, but our feeling about outcome fever is that it disrupts this holding environment, that young people can't get to a spot where they can grow and just feel confident and safe, that their world is predictable and trustworthy, right? A holding environment is a general way to describe what it feels like to be a kid. And I want to go back to number 1 too. Think about the people that guided you as a kid, right? And the biggest differences between that and now. So with that as a brief introduction, Bobby Foose and I met at Colgate University. Bobby's in his 3rd year, I believe, right, Bob, of playing soccer out there, and
Right, yeah.
and is 21 years old.
21.
21.
Mhm.
So my position is that Bobby and all his colleagues grow up in a very different way than everybody else on this call did. And Bobby, you've heard me use the term outcome fever.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you a couple of questions, and you hold forth. What does that term mean to you? And how do you see it in your own childhood and late adolescence, and in those of your colleagues and friends and teammates?
Yeah. So personally, I grew up in Washington, D.C., in a very, very competitive area. It was all about grades, college, getting in places, and my process was a little different because of soccer, but same goes for that. But I guess to me, it's the feeling of being obsessed with the idea of being everything to everyone at all times. And feeling like when you make a mistake, the whole world is going to come down on you. And then in college, especially, I'd say, I think high school, I was a little more stress-free, but in college, especially, I've kind of become stressed with the idea of not being at the top of everything, academics and soccer, and especially on things that I've worked at really hard my whole life, I guess. And in terms of my team, like on a less personal note, in the past year, we had a really tough season, on and off the field, and soccer and impacted more than just soccer for the first time in my life. It wasn't fun to me because of how poorly we were doing, and it affected the team's relationships, academics, happiness, and it was all because we were so obsessed with the idea of living up to expectations. And I feel like expectations are so high in my life.
You know, Bobby, the first thing you said, I wrote down because it still hits me so powerfully, and you guys probably remember, but being everything to everybody. And then you said, I forget how you worded it, but if you fail, do you remember how you worded it? If you fail, do you remember how you worded it?
I mean, the whole world crashes down on you sometimes. Yeah.
That's what you said.
Mhm.
And you know, I wonder if there are any reactions. Again, we have a really small group of people here, but I know Judge and I will react with that to that. But any Christine or Bob, Frank, Larry, 879, any reactions to hearing that? How does that hit you guys?
I guess I would just say, you know, I appreciate you sharing, Bobby, and I hope you're okay. And it's I do think it can be an unfortunate part of some young people's lives, particularly as you're describing the Washington D.C. area and Colgate it is.
Mhm. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's you're in the high rent district.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, any other, Christine, anybody, Bob, Larry, 879? Christine, well, let me,
I
I'm
do
sorry.
think, and again, I'm sorry for what you're going through as well. I think college can hit kids hard. My daughter was graduated 3 in her class and got her first B in college. And that did not make her feel good to have that 89. Like I think that sometimes you put huge pressure on yourselves. And I saw it with myself growing up. I remember my mom going to a parent teacher workshop and they were like, you got to stop putting pressure on your daughter. And my mom said, I don't put pressure on her. She puts it on herself.
Yeah.
And I think my daughter did the exact same thing and still continues to do that exact same thing. So I can appreciate what you're going through.
Thanks, Christine. Bobby, do you feel like folks in your childhood helped you see that you had outcome fever, that you were, critically preoccupied on the results of things?
Honestly, I've talked with my parents a lot about it, but talking with you has been what's really made me realize that specifically. Because, personally, I've talked to you a lot about how some of my closest friends are struggle with a variety of things. And especially since we've gotten older, and what I've talked to you about is kind of having the stress of feeling like guilty or responsible for so much outside of what I can control. And I think recently that's become a lot on me, and that's kind of what has made me address it. Whereas before, of course I was stressed, of course I was competitive as I am now, but it was never, since I've gotten older, it's felt a lot more serious, if that makes sense. Things matter more, I guess, or appear to.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. That all makes sense. And, Judge Broderick and I are always, hi, Melinda. John Broderick and I are always, thanks for coming. Back to the Latin thing, right? Are always, sadly, I'm just looking for the right button to push here. We're always sadly surprised that we're among the people, we're among the small number of people in the lives of kids saying, hey, you seem really stressed, and naming this thing called outcome fever. Because as I've said, I think in past episodes, the digital age, I remember asking Frank in the first one, the computer age, right? The age of time famine, the age of endless gizmos, the age of increasing responsibilities come on us so quickly that I think as a parent body, as educators, as coaches, we just haven't caught up to it. And for some reasons that often elude me, it becomes really difficult to name this thing that I've chosen to call outcome fever. But, and I'd like to get Bobby's further comments and then turn it over to the judge. It's preeminently clear to me, I've been a therapist since 85. That's 22 and 15 is 37 years. And I taught school before that. It's preeminently clear that outcome fever is the affliction of the day for kids, and that just by naming it, I'll ask you, Bobby, just to have a guy like me in the room naming this thing, outcome fever, and that, what was that like? And this isn't about me, trust me, but what's that like for your teammates and yourself to hear a fella naming this thing?
I don't know. It personally hit home for a lot of us because it's something that you feel so intensely in your daily life, but you can't really put a finger on. And in the way that we've grown up, no one's ever told us that that's irregular and that that shouldn't be the way that we're feeling, because everyone is so, I don't know, caught up in the world we live in and competitive. But it sounds like such a simple term, but no one ever really thinks enough about it. And that's why I think you've been really good for our team, both as a collective and as for a lot of individuals. But yeah, I guess just naming something that you feel so intensely that you couldn't before does a lot for you.
Yeah, and let me just ask, I mean, I've talked to Larry and Frank and Christine a little bit. If you're willing, Bob and Melinda and 879, does that term outcome fever make sense to you guys as parents? I think you muted Melinda. Or maybe you weren't trying to share, but does that term make sense to you guys? Bob, would you be willing to throw a few coins in the fountain?
I just think for me, the way I'm looking at some of these things, I didn't have like some of these to the previous conversations. I grew up a lot differently. I didn't feel this kind of pressure as much, and I think for me, yeah, the term makes sense. And for me, I just wonder when I see someone like Bob, yeah, I think he's already accomplished a lot. I wonder if you ever take the time to pat yourself on the back and think about what you have accomplished already in such a short amount of time. And so it's, seems to me that you're pretty incredible success already. And then so I'm hoping that, you should cheer up. Hope it gets better. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
I
I
appreciate
don't know
it.
if that's what we're talking about, but that's what I feel like.
Thank you.
No, I think that's helpful. I wonder, I had some college kids say to me, some Middlebury kids say to me, we hear it all the time. We're supposed to be in the most fun years of our life, and then we get guilty if we're not having fun. Is that something that rings true to you, Bob?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've heard people say that 100%. And I mean, I'm not someone who's ever really like thought too much about that. I think there's a lot of fun parts about a lot of different parts of life. But I mean, to be honest, like I've enjoyed this semester the most in college because myself and a lot of my friends have addressed problems with you. And I feel like stress has been at an all-time low, and that might be because we're out of season. But I think, yeah, I mean, I'm actually really enjoying myself right now because of taking that load off.
And you might think I've paid Bobby to say how wonderful I am. I haven't. Although I wish you would send a private message to Mrs. Levin and let her know. But
Yeah.
The thing is, to acknowledge this for kids is part of that holding environment. It's part of the term mirroring. Bob, Melinda, all you guys that are parents, when your babies, when the kids were in the cradles and in the cribs and they discover their fingers, you go in there and go and move your fingers like you're 2 years old too. And when your seventh grader comes home from middle school with it pouting a little bit, and you say, Allison, what's the matter, honey? And that's how children feel mirrored and held, right? And all I do and all Judge Broderick does is just say what we see. Hey, you kids are really stressed. And oh my God, you would think an anvil came off these kids' chests that finally they have an adult naming it. But it's a very difficult thing for folks to name for reasons that often elude me. I just think we're all bombarded by so much junk that it's just, I don't know. I can't explain it. Bobby, do you have any final comments before I turn it over to the judge about this idea of outcome fever and being everything to everybody and falling apart upon failure? And
Yeah, I mean, I guess one last comment is I feel like I'm seeing a common difference between why people feel that way. And one version of outcome fever is people obsessed with results, which I'm definitely a victim of sometimes, but I feel like my outcome fever personally is more tied into relationships and people's perception of me. I think too much about that. And that's a totally different problem than being considered about being upset about straight A's or winning every game or all of that stuff. But I think something that is equally as stressful, if not more sometimes, is people's view of you. So that's what kind of taking a step back and just being present has helped me with.
Yeah, the fear of people's opinions has gone hog wild. I'm working with a lot of sports teams at the moment, and I goof around a lot, and people are doing one-arm push-ups and singing and so on. But I'll ask some trivial question just to keep kids on their toes and have fun. What's the square root of -100? And you would have thought, legitimately, I don't exaggerate, that I would, the results of this question determine your future. And kids look at each other like, oh my God, and I'm just fooling around. And I notice when kids get something wrong, 8 people 4 on either side will say, what the hell, you didn't know the square root? And there's this idea that you got to know everything and you can't be wrong. And the fear of people's opinion is a thing. And again, think about your childhoods. You know, I'm going to get on a soapbox a little bit, but boys are not boys. I was one of those. Boys are not allowed to fight anymore, which I suppose is a good thing if you run a high school, Frank, right? Well, Larry, educator, but as far as people's opinions and the bullying and the teasing and the insecurities generally about who one is, that those things are real. And if you're 14 and you have kids dogging you every day about, oh, you're stupid, it's very difficult. I talked to countless kids who were just, bullying is real. And it goes to the following sort of dark comment, but so be it. I mean, I think as an adult body, we've lost track of how to really make sure kids are learning the 6 eyes of imagination and intestinal fortitude. I've spoken about these, and I'm just pleased to have this conversation. And I know tonight we want to talk about solutions, and it's on my outline, right? So Bobby, can you stay on the call, or do you have to study for an exam?
Time it's 7. I can stay on for another 10 minutes. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, before you leave, say goodbye or something, but Judge, do you want to talk about what you've seen in terms of outcome fever?
Yeah, I would, Jeff. First of all, Bobby, if you have to drop off. But I just want to say something to you. No one outside of your family, and I'll bet they'll forget after a while, how many games you won at Colgate, how many goals you scored at Colgate. Nobody will know and nobody will care. I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just not that important in the big picture of life. If I were interviewing someone like you for a job and you went to Colgate and you played varsity soccer, I would say, wow, this guy's pretty good. He's got his life together. He can micromanage and he can do big things too. I would never say to you, what was your record? How many goals did you score? People have a view of that is off the charts. Unless you're going to play professional soccer, and maybe you are, nobody's going to care. In all the years, Bobby, I practiced law, then I became a judge. Nobody in all those years ever said to me, where did you go to law school? Never mind, how did you do in constitutional law?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what you're reflecting is what I've seen. I don't have Jeff's degrees, but I spent the last 5 years of my life, Bobby, talking to kids somewhat younger than you are. But when I talk to them in the 9th grade, they're probably where you are now. And so I'm just channeling your generation. And what I'm seeing is kind of what you've said here tonight. First of all, I admire that you're here. I admire your honesty. I mean that sincerely. It takes guts to do what you did tonight. You're being honest. And I'm not blaming anyone, but I do think that particularly in the world of sports, we have professionalized high school sports. We've professionalized it to the point we have year-round training. Oh my God, I mean, it's unbelievable to me. And the number of kids who are going to go from a high school sports team to a major school like Colgate and play a varsity sport are very few. And those who do may get some scholarship help, but it may not be a free ride. And the number of people who play a varsity sport in college who go anywhere beyond their next job, very few. So I think we have put too much pressure on young people. And we have unwittingly told them it's really important how they do in high school soccer. It's really not that important. What is important is that you learn something about yourself, that you enjoyed playing soccer, and that it became part of your day that you look forward to. If you win, that's great. I'm not against winning, but nobody's going to care in 20 years, Bobby. I hate to break it to you. Nobody. But you know what you'll remember? You'll remember some game. You may have lost it, but you're going to remember what you did after. You're going to remember something about it, and it won't be micro, I tell you that. The other thing that I see as it relates to kids is that we, not kids, by the way, but they're victims of this culture. We have persuaded your generation that your GPA is pretty important, way more important than it is. And so you're striving to be the best constantly in everything. I've had so many kids, Bobby, and you said it tonight, they fear failure, whatever that means to them. They feel they're going to disappoint somebody. They don't have time in their life. I mean, I could never have played varsity soccer in high school, not mind Colgate. I would have flunked out. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I would have been too tired. So my hat's off to you. But what I'm trying to suggest, and we need to suggest to kids in this culture, is the reason you're playing sports is because you like athletics and you have some talent. And you're going to derive joy from that. And you're probably going to give joy to other people watching you. But that's about it. And hopefully later in life, the lessons you'll learn from playing sports and the discipline it took will benefit you. You're not going to get a bigger salary for it, probably. Some of these New England Patriots, after they play Pro Bowl, have trouble getting a job. So I guess I would say, Bobby, take the pressure off. You're in Colgate. It's a great school. You won't always be in college. And you don't want to look back and say, you know, damn it, I had a 3.5, but if I had a 3.2, I might have had more fun there. I might have had different memories than I have now. And it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you. It's a culture that has taken young people and, in my view, overemphasized activities. I also think, and I'm not saying this is true in your case, so please don't I say that, a lot of parents are living so vicariously through their kids' sports, or they're worried their son or daughter didn't start in that game or didn't play enough minutes. Nobody cares about that either, other than the parent. And maybe their son or daughter shouldn't be starting or playing that many minutes. I just think we all need to kind of exhale and relax. It's the kind of stuff Jeff's talking about, which is we need to get back to the reason kids are playing sports, at least the sports that I remember as a kid. And I feel badly for kids who are doing what you're doing, which is extraordinary, Bobby, and not really enjoying it, not having enough time to reflect, or judging how good you are by whatever the score was in the last game. Do you remember who won the Super Bowl 3 years ago? I don't even know who played in the Super Bowl, okay? So if we don't remember that, no one's going to remember what goal you scored on the road or didn't score. I think people in college sports should enjoy where they are. It's a very unusual time in your life, trust me. I thought I'd be at Holy Cross forever, Bobby. It didn't work out that way, okay? So enjoy where you are. Enjoy what you're doing. Don't worry about it. If it works, get a goal, good for you. If you don't worry about that either. You're a varsity soccer player at a major college. Most people in the United States will never be able to say that. Jeff Levin might say it, but he'd have to be drinking when he said it. I mean, we know it's not true, but you can actually say it and mean it. And that's all people will need to know. That's the only image they're going to have, which is this guy's a varsity athlete, went to a great school. Wow, that's impressive. They don't care how many goals you scored. Take the pressure off yourself, Bobby.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's very helpful advice. Yeah.
You got a Bobby, you got a thumbs up from Mr. Vernon down in the corner there too.
Oh, great.
I do think, Dan Boothby, thank you for coming on, and Principal McGowan. The judge's words, Bobby, did those sink beneath the skin? Did they warm you up?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that I've done a lot of thinking about, and that's why I think this has been my best semester of college so far, in terms of just enjoying myself, taking a lot of pressure off outcome fever, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, good. Now go study for the exam and don't get anything less than an A. My God.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, Bobby, if it helps you at all, my first two grades at Holy Cross, my first two grades were 53 and 48. And I did fine at Holy Cross. Take the pressure off.
Yeah.
Enjoy where you are. You're not always going to be 21.
Yeah. It's flying by way too fast.
You don't get to do it a second time, so enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate that. And I'll keep that advice.
Thanks for being on, Bobby.
Yeah. All right. I'll be in touch.
Thanks, Bobby. See you, kid.
You guys have a great one. Bye-bye.
You know, Principal McGowan at Winnicott, you had trouble logging on, sir?
I did. The link that you had sent out originally that had all the logins, somehow that did not work, which is different than the link that you just sent.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's not good. Well, I apologize for that. Bill, we're talking about outcome fever. You've heard me use the term probably, and then I'll turn to Mr. Boothby at Northeastern. But Bill, you've heard me use the term.
I haven't. It's listening to the speaker right now. I was just on a webinar this morning that I can't remember who did the survey, but they did a survey with parents as far as what parents want their students to be or the children to be, and it was to be kind. And then when they did the same survey with the students or the children, it was to get good grades and do well. So it was interesting to see the difference between what the parents' perspective was as far as when the children went to school versus what the children thought.
So say that to me again. The parents' perspective when they were kids, they thought that the mission was to be kind.
No, the parents responded that they wanted their children to be kind versus getting good grades and doing well, where the opposite was true when they viewed the children, that the children said that they viewed their parents that they wanted them to have good grades and be successful.
You know, that gap says it all. Dan, let me give you, Dan Boothby is the Director of Sports Performance at Northeastern. We're talking about outcome fever. And please respond if you like also to Bill McGowan's comment about those surveys, Dan.
Oh, I the outcome fever that we're seeing, you know, within our athletes, you know, our freshmen coming in, but all the way through, you know, we've been able to quantify elements of that for them in some of those physiological qualities, and you know, that tension that comes from that constant pressure, you know, is preventing achieving some of those athletic and performance outcomes that they work so hard to achieve. And that's the part that I struggle with the most, when you see an athlete who's been dedicated, trying to do all the right things, almost too much so. And then when those big moments come, that white knuckle tension, and not that it's a poor performance, but it's just that fraction of a second too slow, and it's that missed opportunity. And that's what we really try to help our, unleash that in our student athletes, where there's not that constant fear. The outcome, win or loss, we're going to take the information from that. We're going to watch the video. We're going to break down the good plays, the bad plays, the missed assignments, the mental lapses, and learn from it. We're going to do that no matter what. I've watched it for 20 years at Northeastern. The following morning is the same regardless. The only difference is the mood in the room. And we want to get rid of that completely, and which is damn near impossible, but that's the goal, so that we can just help our students focus on the task at hand, unleashing that tension and unlocking the potential. So.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I want to leave time, albeit a small group at the end if there's some discussion, but I'm just going back. I'm just going back to this outline that I had working. And we're talking about from 4 down solutions, I think, and you saw it with Bobby, as John and I, we didn't apologize, but we identified for Bobby what's really going on with outcome fever, and listening and asking about stress and worries. And this little 3-letter word, fun, a lot of kids will tell you if you ask them that they're not having a lot of fun anymore. I was with one of Dan's teams at Northeastern, and I said, girls, what would you guys like to do that would be really fun? And I heard about Duck, Duck, Goose. These are 20-year-old girls. I heard about treasure hunts. I heard about field trips and stuff that you wouldn't think college kids would be craving, but trust me when I tell you that they are. They want to have more fun. And it sounds probably simple and sort of too simple to not even be important, but I would apologize, I would listen, I would name this elephant of outcome fever. I would ask about stress and worries, and I would say, hey, how can we as a family or as a class or as a school, how can we have more fun? Because if you listen to these kids, they're going to tell you that they're not having enough fun, and they're worried about the results. I mean, the first thing Bobby Foose said was, I worry about being everything to everybody. I didn't grow up like that. None of us did. I worry about being everything to everybody. And his emotions aren't uncommon. So number 5 is device-free rituals, where we want to model, analog behavior. My wife Miranda retells this story, but I was in a pediatrician's office a couple of years ago, waiting to talk to the social worker, and 3, it happened to be dads, came in for a morning appointment with a babe in arms, with, this isn't an iPhone, but with a baby here and an iPhone here, texting with one or talking, and here's a sick baby, and it bothered me. Put the phones down, listen to your kids, ask them how they're doing. And then this first question, who was your most important guide? When I think about my Uncle Murray, I know he dropped everything he was doing now as an adult to come over and hang out with me, because his brother, my dad, was struggling, and he went out of his way to do that. And my guess is everybody on this call had somebody like that. It might have been your mom or your dad. In my case, it wasn't, but it was your girlfriend's mom, or you had a guide who literally paid full attention to you. Turn off the devices. Identify 6, identify elephants and gremlins. I've talked about this on these calls. The elephants are the outside factors that, in my view, feel out of control, including Ukraine, including global warming. Talk about elephants. The gremlins are the internal, the negative self-talk that undergirds outcome fever. Ask kids about it. Hey, I heard this term gremlin. That's the stuff in your head that makes you feel bad. Can you tell dad about that? Even Danny, how old are your kids? How old's Eva? 7, 8?
7.
I mean, do you see signs in your 7-year-old girl of outcome fever?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So she's in the 3rd grade,
First.
or 1st grade, and already signs of outcome fever.
Mhm.
What are you seeing? And then I'll get right back to this list.
The first thing I notice is that tension. But even, problem solving or communication, I think that anxiety prevents her sometimes from being able to affect, and a lot is age appropriate, I think, too. But, I see that nervous system response. And I don't know if that's just because that's the angle I'm looking at, but everything from breathing to muscle tension to coordinated movement to that ability to effectively communicate.
And you've measured that stuff in college athletes at Northeastern for some years, and you see the effects of stress on the body, on the nervous system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So naming those things that are causing this stress for a 7-year-old, for a 17-year-old, for a 27-year-old, I think naming it is the beginning of the healing process. 6, identify elephants and gremlins. How do you guys feel about everything from global warming? Listen, take the time, shut the gizmos off and listen. And then 7, teach them gremlin recognition. I said this 2 weeks ago. There's a great book called Taming Your Gremlin by Rick Carson, which would be a great read for anybody working with kids or raising kids. There's a book, one of my wife's favorites, called Relentless Optimism. These are anti-outcome fever references, these 2 books. Okay. Judge and I are willing to join you with your kids, friends, parents to strategize. Email me. I'll put my stuff in the chat. I say it every week. Listening without judgment is an important component of really listening. I think a lot of adults, and then I'll shut up, but I think a lot of adults I know I have outcome fever. I mean, Miranda will say to me at dinner, do you have to text at dinner? This gizmo is the purveyor of childhood interruptus. This gizmo. It's convenient, but we've sacrificed connection for convenience. And your kids will squawk when you say, we're going to have a device-free night. If they're older than 12, they'll squawk. And maybe we have to lead the way, in my view, and really listen. That's my advice. I wonder, let's see if we can getting discussions with people on Zoom who've not met.
Yes, I wanted to add one thing.
Yeah.
I saw a film 2 weeks ago called Chasing Childhood. And in the first part of that film is a woman, it looks like she's in her 40s. She's sitting in an elementary school library with 8 cute kids. And she asked this question. Now think how you would have answered it in your childhood. She said to these kids in grade school, how many of you go out and play after school? Not one hand went up. And she said, what do you do? And then they went through the litany of things they're obligated to do. They have violin practice, they have soccer practice, they have one practice or another. They don't have free time. And so I know parents are genuine when they say they want their kids to be kind. My guess is the kids want to be kind too. But my guess is those same parents who want their kids to be kind want their kids to be successful academically. And so that message is coming from somewhere, and it's not just from the kids. I think it's important to be honest about that. In all the discussions I've had around New England, talking to kids from the 6th to the 12th grade, I hear over and over and over again the pressure they feel, the expectations that are on their shoulders, that they don't feel comfortable telling their parents how they're feeling. I went to a basketball game at a high school in New Hampshire. I mean, I spoke at a high school in New Hampshire 2 nights before a basketball game, and about 40 parents came. It's a big school, talking about mental health. And principal was embarrassed, and he said, well, if you'd been here 2 nights ago, he said, we had to turn parents away. So many parents here for the basketball game. We have unwittingly told kids, maybe not deliberately, but we're telling them, the culture is telling them, your GPA is important, the number of sports you play is important, how you do in the game is important. Not really. No one will remember it. But the kids will remember that they didn't meet expectations. It's not healthy. And that's playing a part. You can hear it tonight in Bobby, not about his parents, but just about the expectations he feels. And if I were playing varsity soccer at a school like Colgate, I'd feel like I'd won the lottery. And I don't think Bobby felt that way. That's not Bobby's problem. He's dealing with it, but it comes from somewhere. And it doesn't come just from Bobby. That's why this issue that Jeff identifying requires a broader discussion. I see it, I know it's true, and parents need to be part of that discussion.
Yeah, is it any reactions in the open discussion section here? His mic just went off or something. Bob, I see you nodding, sir.
Well, yeah, for me, I just really find it interesting that these seminars, I've seen all of them, and I think there's a lot of truth in that stuff. A lot of the things that we've said, and I remember the judge talking about the way he grew up and the free time and things that you talked about. I mean, I played a lot of sports, but man, my friends and we would go out and play till it got dark and come home, and it was really to this day, I'm 56 years old. It's one of my best memories to this day, and I can remember that stuff pretty vividly, but not how many goals I scored, if that makes sense. But these kids are really, it's amazing to see. I mean, they're so impressive, and they aren't enjoying it. They aren't enjoying the process, and at least it appears that way. I mean, I remember the Middlebury kids and today Bobby, and like I say, these guys they're incredibly successful kids, and they're not even 25 years old. And I think that I don't know what it takes to get them to recognize what they've already accomplished and enjoy the process.
I'll respond to that, but what it gets them to take it. I mean, and Dan Boothby's, an expert in the human body. I mean, the nervous system. These kids, they're in fight or flight a lot, and they're not able to take in compliments. I mean, I did a session with the team at Northeastern just yesterday, where we just shared compliments about each other. The coach said, Jeff, these kids define themselves in terms of their sport. I need them to know that they're great kids. And we sat there for over an hour, I think 18 young ladies and 3 coaches and the old guy. And in my 40 years, I've never seen anything so beautiful and moving. I'm on the verge of tears right now. Amanda, you are such a reliable friend. I love you because you do this. And hey, Kelly, I've never seen anybody work as hard as you. Amazing. And these kids absorb these compliments like the driest of sponges. And yeah, kids were crying and tears of joy. And I truly was so moved by this. And we're missing that. And their nervous systems are jammed up 6 ways to Sunday. And you're right, Bob. These kids should be super proud of themselves. They should. When I tell people I went to Dartmouth, they start genuflecting. And I just majored in screwing off. I was 19 years old. What did I know? I looked around me. I find myself, oh, this is kind of cool. You went to, oh my God, you went to Dartmouth? It's crazy out here. And this is webinar 4. We're gonna have 6 more. I hope instead of 6 people, we have 600. But I think John and I are just going to keep preaching the doctrine and suggesting that we keep having these conversations. I'm going to put my email and my phone number here. Anybody that's interested in getting in touch, please. Anybody else? Frank, Bill, Larry? Kelly, Melinda, please pipe right in. I used to teach middle school, so I have to call on everyone, Frank. It's what I do.
Perfect wait time. I just would reiterate, I appreciate what you do, and John and Miranda, and it was really impressive to hear Bobby speak. You know, and I've said this a bit, and I just think there's a lot of variables to the complexity of what we all experienced, but definitely kids. And do I think this is part of it? Of course it is. You know, I think it's complicated, and maybe some of it, this is me projecting how much I loved my college playing experience and coaching experience and all that came with it. So there is a lot of messiness. And then, you know, I was just doing a quick, it's that, you know, 0-18 seasons aren't fun, and yeah, but I think the key thing for me with Bobby is the being able, he's finding resources, communicating, and I just think that is so healthy. And obviously sometimes that the stress of someone like him in such a high, again, I'm going to use the term again, high rent district, that it can be dangerous, you know. And obviously one of the things you said to start with the WPI, and obviously it can be everywhere, but I mean, just the volume in such a nice, beautiful small school is just alarming.
Yeah, the WPI, the 8 suicides is alarming. And just on this grim subject, I ask every group of kids I'm with whose life has been touched by the suicide of a friend, and it's always 50 to 60% of the room. So it rings the bell of urgency even stronger that we as adults, we just want to name this thing called outcome fever. Miranda, I think it was you that you came up with that term a couple of years ago, I think, right? So her microphone doesn't work, Bob. That's what you're saying right there. But my wife came up with that. Wait a minute, she's reaching maybe for the mic. No, but that's the term my wife, outcome fever, and it's real. John and I see it, and you guys see it. You know, if Danny Boothby sees it in his 7-year-old daughter, we're not doing something right. But I'm grateful you're all here. Bill, any comments? Kelly, Martin, Melinda, anybody?
I missed a lot of today's call, so I apologize for that. I had an incorrect link, but I think one of the things that's resonating with me is what John said about, you know, the basketball game is packed and you got all these families there supporting the athletes. And I was a college athlete and I coached soccer for 18 years at Division I soccer. I'm a school counselor now, and I think one of the hardest parts is trying to get people to engage in these type of conversations. They're willing to carve out time for certain things and not prioritize others. So, you know, how do we actually increase that participation and engagement with our communities?
I think that's the key question in the Vox Clementis and Deserto, and it's just a relief, Kelly and Bill and Dan and all of you, Frank, Larry here, educators on here. I mean, at this point on this call, we have 2 parents, Bob and Melinda. But my feeling is if we all start singing this song together, John and I, and we want to start a movement. It just doesn't feel okay that kids would suffer like this. You know, my wife will testify, it doesn't keep me up late at night because I'm old and I sleep well, but it really, really, really deeply bothers me that these children, I've told it before, when I turned on the radio in 1967 and heard B.B. King outline a chord and sing some blues. And I thought, wow, I need to do that. These kids' minds and hearts are so cluttered with outcome fever that I often think they're not even doing the stuff they wanted to. And it's real. So I appreciate it, Kelly. I'd love to talk more with you and everybody on here and further this movement.
All right, Jeff, I just before we went tonight, I started this up 6 years ago, and I don't have any agenda. And I have been to more schools than anybody in New England right now. And I probably hug more kids with wet eyes than anybody in New England too. And these kids are not doing well. Some of them are great, some of them are going to be fine, and we all know that. So I don't want to generalize too much, but a lot of kids that come up to me are not doing well. And they're not always the usual suspect. Some of them are varsity athletes. Some of them are really bright, able students who are really struggling with their emotions and their mental health and their stress. And the numbers that you see on those youth risk behavioral surveys that I won't go through, but those should alarm all of us. And that's not just happening because of the kids. That's the message that has so resonated with me after 6 years of doing this. And the reason the childhood of these kids is not like our memories is for a reason. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to get to. That's what I think all of us need to talk about. I am certain that my parents wanted me to do well in school, but not because they told me every day, not because they checked my grades every day, but because I knew they had faith in me and wanted me to do well. That was it. A lot of the kids I'm talking to, that's not their experience. We had one young man who was very impressive at a podcast a couple of weeks ago and said when he was in high school, his father used to check every day when they uploaded the grades to see how he was doing. I mean, if I lived in that world, I couldn't have hit the 65 in the chemistry quiz, and I wouldn't have been very happy about it. We just are putting, not deliberately, are putting pressure on these kids in a multitasking virtual environment that they are having trouble handling, and that very frankly, any of us on this call at their age and their place, dealing with all they're dealing with, would have trouble too. And I just can't say enough times to enough people, could we finally have a community conversation about what I'm seeing and hugging? The kids have these problems, but the kids are not the problem. And they don't know where to go or how to talk about it, but we should. We're the adults in the room. And so what Jeff is doing, I just so support what he's doing because he's right. He's absolutely right from my 6 years of granular experience. And I know solutions are possible, but not if everyone goes to their own silo. That won't solve any problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that, John. We're unlike the way I've lived most of my life, I'm trying to end this on time. So, wait a minute, I see something in the chat. Is that for me, Bob? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bob, you were reacting to the checking of the grades. A lot of parents are, they have these portals, Aspen or whatever it is, you can check your kids' grades. Right, the balance of preparing the child for the road versus the road for the child is out of whack, but it is 8 o'clock and we're gonna end on time. Please get in touch with me if you want to keep talking. And Abby, thanks for producing this with the beautiful orange background and the what is that sign again? Not the number sign.
Oh,
the
come on,
hashtag.
good job.
The hashtag. Listen,
I
when
thought
email
you
came
were-
out, I told my wife I wasn't using email. I think my instincts were right, but thank you all for coming very much. Stay in touch.
Thank you.
Next week, the link is the same, Abby, right? Same link as it was the one that worked tonight.
Yep, and I put it in the chat.